How's everybody doing today? No. How's everybody doing today? How y'all feeling? My name's Carl Williams, and I'm with...
Purvi Shah.
How was that party last night? People good? You guys are all low energy. How are you doing today? That's a little better. We'll let that slide. But so yesterday was a powerful day. The opening session and the closing session for me were really touching. And the day before, watching Concerning Violence and hearing from the fabulous Miss Fanon were really epic things for me. And what I wanted to do to ask from you all is to just take a few seconds and think of all of the things you experienced yesterday and yesterday at the party and maybe even this morning, and think of one word, if you can do that on the brain power you have this morning, one word that kind of encapsulates that for you all. And then I'm going to call on some folks. Or actually, you can just stand up and tell me, give me one word from yesterday. I didn't hear you. Say it again. Give me another one. What was the one in the back? Yeah. And what else? Love, empowering. Two more. Inspirational. That's a hyphen. Badass. So that's what I feel. I'm gonna leave it at that. Badass. So thank you for that. Purvi's here and gonna introduce some folks, and we'll get the day started off right.
So we wanted to start off the morning today with just yesterday. Can we get a round of applause for Jaribu Hill yesterday, who dropped the mic on the stage, who's in the back over there, who she taught a class in the middle of yesterday's closing plenary. So I know it was really powerful for most of us. So we wanted to start the day today with a few words from one of our other movement elders, Ajamu Baraka, who is the founder of the U.S. Human Rights Network, is a longtime activist, organizer, not only around Black liberation struggles in the United States, but also across the world. And so he's going to kind of walk us through a little bit of a reflection on yesterday and sort of the power and importance of what we've been doing over the last couple of days. Ajamu?
Thank you, and it is really a pleasure to be here this morning for this historic. You know, people talk about these gatherings and always use that term historic, but I think this one truly is historic because of the role that you play, because of the times that we are facing, and because of the preparation that we must engage in as we go forward. So this is really a historic gathering because we have some difficult times, friends. We have some difficult struggles ahead of us, and preparing for what we have ahead of us is vitally important. And that's what we need to think about as we go through the day today. You know, yesterday, and I heard some of the terms people talked about yesterday being revolutionary, inspirational, insightful is my term. Today is going to be a continuation of that, but today we want to begin to take a look at how we begin to strategize. How do we deepen our understanding of what it is we're up against, and how do we fashion the kinds of responses that we need to develop, not just in terms of responding to the conditions, but in terms of transforming and shaping the conditions that we face here in this country and globally. And we say globally because of the role that this state, this society, this empire plays in the world. That what we shape here, what we shape and develop here in this country has a fundamental impact on the entire world. So what that means is that we have some heavy responsibilities, not only for ourselves and to ourselves, but also for the people of the world. We've got to get clear, friends. We've got to gain clarity. We've got to name what it is we are up against, but we have to have the courage to envision something new, to really believe that we can be more than what we are today, to believe that transformation is in fact possible, to believe that we in fact can win. When you believe that we can win, that we can transform ourselves and transform this society, then it grounds you in a seriousness that will not only take you through today, but take you forward as we engage in this protracted struggle that we have to engage in. Yesterday, those two plenaries were really inspiring for me. That plenary last night was really incredible. The discussions that we had yesterday were really insightful, and today we're going to continue. We got to be clear, because if we're not clear, we'll find ourselves chasing shadows. We'll find ourselves not living up to the responsibility, the historic responsibility that we have laid out before us. So, as we go forward, let's keep that in mind, understanding our responsibilities, understanding what we have to do, understanding our responsibility to be clear about how we move forward. And let's keep in mind, people talked about revolutionary love. Let's keep that notion in mind, because we're going to need it. Those of us who've been around a little longer, we may not be, I don't want to sound like Dr. King, we may not be with you all at that final moment, but there's going to be a final moment. And you know what? It's going to be in your lifetimes, because this thing is coming apart, and we up against an enemy that's serious about trying to maintain its hegemony. And we've got to be serious about our task and understand that in the 21st century, we're talking about a century of transition, because the global structures of white supremacy are coming apart, and they're going to end this century. This century. So, my friends, let's keep that in mind as we go forward. Again, thank you all for coming out. We have a day of activities, of reflection, of struggle, and keep in mind that as long as we stay together and stay clear about our mission, we in fact will win.
So the schedule for today is, after this, there'll be another series of workshops. In the afternoon, you'll be able to meet in regional strategy sessions to start actually planning our work in our local communities and how we're going to continue and collaborate moving forward. There'll also be, towards the end of the day, we'll be having Rad Talks, which will be 8 speakers that will be presenting their radical vision for what could be possible if law really stood for Black lives. And after that, we'll have a reflection session where we'll get a chance to sort of, too often we go to convenings like this, and there's so many ideas that we're brimming with. We don't have a moment to pause and to think about it and to share our reflections. So we'll end the day with that, and we'll come back to the auditorium here for a closing. So one last announcement before I bring on our next person to the podium is that today's activities are in 2 or 3 different spaces, all on Columbia campus, but some of the workshops are in Hamilton Hall, and they're also in the Mathematics Hall, and some of our volunteers in the lobby will be able to direct you to them. So just so you know, not everything is in this building. There are a couple of workshops that are actually in this building, but the rest of them are split across a couple of other buildings. So I want to bring up now, we have a special treat, which is, we've been really trying to integrate the connection between sort of political thought, revolution, and culture. And I'm going to bring up someone who I think is a poet of our generation. Asha Monet is a Cuban-Jamaican poet who is a sort of internationally known artist, educator, poet, musician, performer. And Asha has been incredibly active in this current Black Lives Matter moment. And I've had many moments myself where her poetry and her artistry has actually been able to speak into existence some of the things that I find it hard to verbalize and it make me connect to my heart. So we're super pleased that Asha is here, and she's going to be sharing some of her poetry and art with us. So Asha Monet.
Good morning, family. You can tell I've been using my voice a lot. So, let's take a deep breath together. How about that? First thing in the morning, okay? We're gonna take a deep breath in with our nose, all right? And then we're gonna release with our mouth. Okay, that was lovely, that felt good. So I'm gonna start by addressing you all before I get into my poems. I never quite know what I will say and or do, so bear with me. But I walk into a space with the guidance of the folks who have come before me, and being aware that my spirit will always call out and say what it needs to upon the room. I think when I first heard about Law for Black Lives, it seemed very humorous to me. In fact, it seemed as if it was antithetical, like somehow they didn't work, the juxtaposition that there could be law for Black lives. That for me, law, legality, the very intention of it was to keep Black lives at bay and, if anything, to limit the ability of living for Black lives. So we're at a very, they say crucial moment, but I wonder if we were ever not at a crucial moment as Black folks in America. And with that, speaking in front of people who are intentionally trying to fight this legal system and work within this system, it is really difficult for me to leave here with anything except a strong articulation of the fact that I'm not sure the fight in the legal system is going to be the one that's going to work, is going to be the one that's going to change things. And I'm afraid to say that, knowing that some people have devoted their lives to doing that in this room. It's not to say that the work that is being done is not necessary, but it's to say we have tried and tried and tried to work within this legal system, and I'm not certain that it will budge with just law. I haven't been able to to see most of the panels and discussions, but as an artist and as a poet, I find myself at an interesting place being invited to speak here, which I'm very honored. Often artists are brought into the movement as props, to come in, to galvanize support, to exploit emotional turmoil, to take charge of spectacle. And we aren't enough integrated into that very fundamental philosophy and how we start to think about ourselves as people, how we start to actively take action. I'll say something that Audre Lorde said about June Jordan, which I think is permanent. She said her function as a poet was to make revolution irresistible. And I wondered about that. I thought about it a lot. What does that mean? A lot of us talk about revolution, radical thought, uprising, movement. What does that really mean? What does it mean for us to think about revolution? I recently came from a trip to Cuba where you would think it was the epitome of what we thought a revolution could be and could do, right? And it brought some very important questions. It raised some very important questions for me, which was, are we really prepared, Black Americans? Are we really prepared for revolution? I mean, I'm speaking very literal here, not on an ethereal, philosophical way. I mean sacrifice. I mean privileges being stripped from us, quote unquote privileges, right? Are we really thinking about what does it mean to not have that latte, right? To not have the ability to watch every television show we want, right? Or is revolution possible where we talked about this. We met with a sister in exile who said she said of herself she was a champagne socialist, which I thought was very funny. And the way she described that was she believed that she deserved certain things in life. And the way that black folks have thought about revolution, we've thought about liberation, is that somehow we had to give up everything, right? That revolution meant we could not have the things we believe we deserved. And oftentimes that's the conversation. That's the paranoia around really thinking about radical thought and making it happen, is what's going to be sacrificed in our quality of life, and how do we create a quality of life that can truly be revolutionary. I want to say, I'm going to read some poems, and they might not have anything to do directly with what I'm saying, but they do in the coloring of it and in the influence and the reasons why I wrote them. One of the things that I wanted to talk about a little bit before I get into the poems, I'll read a short excerpt, but stream of consciousness as a poetic form of relinquishing the mind out of a random mental jargon, but into practical feeling, sensibilities. This is where we find ourselves as poets, as humans, as livers of life. How do we move from a square consciousness, a consciousness that's dictated by merely logic and lines, to circles and flow, perhaps the permeance of shapes melting into each other, making ways for love to access the creative instincts in all of us, magical and mystical, forests, rivers, waterfalls, streams, a flow, flowing. How do we flow? A current of imagery, the likeness of water spiraling down streams, voices as electricity, the force behind charges. How do we see ourselves as lawyers, as legal defenders, as folks who are in movement? How do we see ourselves as forces of flow? Behind charges, the size of our abundance, how great and grand and vast we are, to describe a voice as more than telling and saying, but to show. How do we show with our voices? How do we create a new way and describe a new measure of thought? I'll say about this movement and this moment right now that there's a lot of, the media is doing a lot to distort our emotional sensibility, right? And as a poet, one of the things that I try to work on is our internal worlds. And we talk about that as writers. How do we write the interior world into the external? And I feel like it might not seem like it could do any good, but I'll say I challenge and I encourage you all to spend time writing about your interior world. And in that interior world, imagining a world outside of the one we have currently today. Chela Sandoval talks about poetry and women of color and artists being able to decolonize imagination. How do we see our work as the access, the part at which we start to break out the ways we imagine movement, the ways we imagine spaces like this, the ways that we start to recreate new spaces and new ideas. I say this to say this moment is not new. I keep trying to say that. I feel like we're acting as if it is. And Julius Lester once said, black folks got caught up on black and forgot about power. And I want to say that because, I know I don't have much time, but I just wanted to say that because I believe that we're at a moment where we're talking a lot about sexual fluidity. But I want us to dare us to think about blackness and its fluidity, right? Not just in a gendered way, but really to think about blackness and its fluidity. Because blackness is not, when you say law for black lives, we're not just talking about people with black skin. We're talking about Palestinians. We're talking about El Salvadorians. We're talking about, you're black too. You're black too. Palestine, I get it. You know, we're talking about how do people embrace, you know, not just the exploit blackness, but how do we talk about blackness and it's the spirit of blackness, the range of blackness, that core, that soul, that difference within us that we should be embracing and encouraging the embrace of, and not just limit it to a distilled experience of color. So maybe that's like one nugget that could help, and then I'll go into these poems. Thank you guys for bearing with me this morning. Sometimes I feel really, I don't say disappointed, because I feel like these ideas that I have, sometimes I don't have the spaces where I'm invited to talk about them. So until I'm in a podium, I don't get the chance to do it. So I'm going to now read some poems. I wrote this poem for, actually for CCR. I was invited to do an event that was about Guantanamo and trying to get some of our brothers over there free. And I wrote this poem for Fahad, and I'll just read it. When you and I were young, we believed in the sanctuary of peace. I wake sweating, strangled by a nightmare. My America begins the day chewing on my cry. I am 27 and have never killed a man, but I know the face of death as if heirloom. My country memorizes murder as lullaby. We spoon-feed poison, labeled patriotism from young, and the nation grows fat on fury, full on healthy hatred. We are bloody light, and though the bullet never touched me, I hold it still between my teeth and spit bodies off my tongue. I confess, we are hugging ourselves beneath the rage. Though you cannot see the fire, I am a house of flames. I prepare for another hard day's work. Emerge a massacre of meaning, marketing, mental industry of reason. What is treason to a country called love? Fickle and scared. What is heaven to a people who never look above? If there is a movement, may it be a region in the heart where souls meet to practice being human together, though apart. Is there a faith for the faithless, a place for the placeless, beyond prison bars? Beyond the prison bars, a man can become faceless, a presence more of essence, a wrath more than wreckage. Is there a worse crime than stolen time? Have you words to replace a year, a life, clinging on to phrases? Have you a quote that can mend a deep-seated wound? Ancient is cradled breath and beating wombs to be a casualty of this endless war, humiliated and forgotten rooms of this earth. Every day is a morning. Every day is morning. I touch the welted scar of a dark night. The only protest is fingertips. Feel this. Right here is where they took my survival. I am the last siren of hope in a glimpse of this torched town. I linger in your laws. I linger in your laws. I linger in your laws. An unkept promise. When you and I were young, we believed in the sanctuary of peace, and we are old now. I am gray, wrinkled by the pain. I drag my body because there are other bodies on my shoulders. Some cry, others laugh. We mumble stories of remembered paths. Have we not learned that you can try to kill a man, but you cannot kill the love people have for him? And through this shred of a silent seed, a smoldering garden grows. Above all the greed, there are roaches, there are critters, there are creatures, there are secrets who know freedom better than a detainee in a Guantanamo Bay in a prison. And it's an underworld for human oaths. A man hums in the horror. His voice swarms in the silence, lamenting, fought breath. The body is a battlefield, and he angers for a memory of something before: a lost son, gone father, left brother, a forgetful friend. He scratches at a wall to number the days, or was it the amount of Americans who will never care or listen? I am a woman watching my country make enemies of God. They would sacrifice the sunrise for a million lies if they could. There are lives beneath the darkness of eyes, and his name is son, is father, is daughter. There is a village where names go to wander. When you and I were young, we believed. We believed in the sanctuary of peace. They should have told us it was war. So I'm just gonna read 2 more poems. One is called Jungle Gym. I'm from Brooklyn, New York. And as y'all know, there's a lot changing in Brooklyn. And this all has to do with the range of Black lives, so here we go. Jungle Gym. In Ashford backyards, hanging clothes on the laundry line, jams spill out the 70s radio from the kitchen windowsill. Swollen mosquito bites and scraped knees, dirty Band-Aids hang off scrawny elbows. We wash pit bulls with a water hose and shampoo soap suds flood the cracks in the concrete, sun chasing the back of our shoulders. We tan in Newport smoke, sipping on sweating cups of Pepsi and freezer ice tray cubes. City kids claw toward the earth while adults build more buildings. We ran toward the trees, climbed fences, a marathon to connect to the world, man-made children with vivid visions, empowered by inner rhythm to know the difference between war and love, tolerance and respect. Loyalty was law, Manhattan was the government. I used to think all police officers were born in a jailhouse somewhere in Midtown and that the mayor fetched them on us come morning. We rose in split open skin, cruising the concrete on handlebars, sporting fresh knee scabs, the sidewalk armed with chalk, illustrating inner city blood, and laughter lived through us. Foul-mouthed knuckleheads, careful, we were so careful not to die too young. Gap-toothed smiles guarding the graves of our greats. Metropolis moonlight mocks the Hudson River. Apartments turn their igneous light bulbs on and the night blushes sapphire of incandescent stars flickering in buildings and bridges. Many love the mouth. Many love the mouth and murder secrets there. Words heard throughout the city from the old gunmetal pigeon, hungry and flying over asphalt rivers. Who records the bird's eye? The testament of tenement rooftops overlooking the millions. So this is where I'll end with you. Thank Purvi and Law for Black Lives for having me. I wrote this poem. I was invited to do a vigil for Say Her Name vigil that happened in Union Square for all of our sisters who were affected by police brutality. And I was asked to read this, to read something, and the same day Huffington Post had asked me to read something for them. So the poem got shared, but I hate viral sharing. I like the experience, so hopefully you guys feel the energy behind it. This is for all our sisters, and right now one of our sisters in particular who we are waiting to hear the story behind, Miss Sandra Bland. So I raise her name and I say her name with you all here today. I am a woman carrying other women in my mouth. Behold a sister, a daughter, a mother, dear friend. Spirits demystified on my tongue. They gather to breathe and exhale a dance with death we know is not the end. All these nameless bodies, haunted by pellet wounds in their chests, listen for them in the saying of a name you cannot pronounce. Black and woman is a sort of magic you cannot hashtag. The mere weight of it is too vast to be held. We hold ourselves, an inheritance felt between the hips, womb of soft darkness, portal of light. Watch them envy the revolution of our movement, how we break open to give life flow. Why the terror of our tears, the torment of our taste. My rage is righteous, my love is righteous, my name is righteous. Hear what I am not here to say. We too have died. We know we are dying too. I am not here to say, look at me, how I died so brutal a death. I deserve a name to fit all the horror in. I am here to tell you how if they mentioned me in their protests and their rallies, they would have to face their role in it too. My beauty too. I have died many times before the blow to the body. I have bled many months before the bullet to the flesh. We know the body is not the end. Call it what you will, but for all the handcuffed wrists of us, the shackled ankles of us, the bend over to make room for you of us, how dare we speak anything less than I love you. We who love just as loudly in the thunderous rain as when the sun shines golden on our skin and the world kisses us unapologetically. We be so beautiful when we be. How you gonna be free without me? Your freedom tied up with mine. At the nappy edge of my soul, singing for all my sisters. Watch them stretch their arms in my voice, how they fly open-chested toward your ear. Listen for Rakia Boyd, Tanisha Anderson, Yvette Smith, Ayanna Jones, Kayla Moore, Shelley Frey, Miriam Carey, Kendra James, Alberta Spruill, Tarika Wilson, Sharice Francis, Chantel Davis, Melissa Williams, Darnisha Harris, Michelle Casso, Pearlie Golden, Yvette Smith, Catherine Johnston, Eleanor Bumpers, Natasha McKenna, Shaniqua Proctor, Sandra Blahan. We will not vanish in the bated breath of our brothers. Show me a man willing to fight beside me, my hand in his, the color of courage. There is no mountaintop worth seeing without us. Meet me in the trenches where we lay our bodies down in the valley of my voice. Meet me. Say it. Say her name. Thank you. I hope you guys enjoy your day. I know it's weird having me here, but thank you.
So you know what I mean when I say Aja is the voice of our generation. So thank you so much for coming back to Law for Black Lives on our second day. We're going to have another beautiful day of strategizing, of imagining, of visioning, of celebrating, of building with each other. So we'll get off to our workshops, and the next time we'll all be together will be for the afternoon Rad Talk. So thank you, and see you in a little bit.